Hi everyone.
Hello. We have now reached chapter 7 of In Search of Christian Freedom. Ray Franz transitions now from salvation by faith, not by works, to from house to house, because he knows, as we know, if we've been Jehovah's Witnesses, that the chief work by which you are saved, if you're a Jehovah's Witness, is evangelism, specifically door-to-door, or public ministry, as they might call it, or field service. So he starts chapter 7 from house to house with a quote from Acts 20, verse 20, a verse familiar to all of us if we're Jehovah's Witnesses. So why don't we read the New World Translation version of that first?
Okay. While I did not hold back from telling you any of the things that were profitable, nor from teaching you publicly and from house to house.
He doesn't cite the New World version of it there. He cites the Jerusalem Bible to make the point that there's a problem, or more than one problem here. The Jerusalem Bible version of Acts 20:20 says, I have preached to you and instructed you both in public and in your homes. Now he doesn't take up the significance of this verse yet. He does that deeper into the chapter.
But you can see it makes a big difference to your takeaway.
Yeah.
Or your understanding.
And he starts the chapter this way. Probably no other feature of their activity so distinguishes Jehovah's Witnesses as their door-to-door visitation. People around the world are accustomed to seeing them call at their homes with Bible literature and magazines, in some areas every few weeks. While it is true that there are other religions that are strong on evangelizing and that display a missionary spirit, there are none in which going door to door is viewed not simply as one means for spreading a message, but as in itself an evidence of the genuineness of one's Christianity.
If the question were put to the headquarters organization of the Watchtower Society, whether each member, if physically able, must do door-to-door witnessing to be a true witness, in fact to be a true Christian, the answer would probably be that this is not an absolute requirement. Actually, it would be extremely difficult to get a clear, straightforward answer on such a question. The headquarters organization is remarkably reticent about expressing itself in writing on sensitive issues, and even when given, answers are often couched in ambiguous terms or evasive and roundabout reasonings. We have already seen, however, that responsible men in the organization acknowledge that there is serious reason to question whether in reality the witness community as a whole engages in this activity simply out of a heartfelt desire to do it, as something freely motivated, done without any sense of compulsion.
Why then is it done? The evidence is that it is something that has, to all intents and purposes, become a virtual rule of law, so that omission of the act brings a sense of guilt, much in the same way in which a practicing Catholic would feel guilt if failing to attend Mass on a regular basis. Longtime witness and headquarters member A.H. McMillan plainly stated that door-to-door work came to be viewed as, quote, a covenant-keeping arrangement, and, quote, a duty to God. That was in McMillan's book, Faith on the March. Though claiming to believe the apostolic teaching that we are saved by faith and not by works, we regularly find statements implying otherwise in the Watchtower publications. As but one example, the Watchtower of July 15, 1979, page 14, states, quote, it is by our endurance in proclaiming this good news of the kingdom that we may attain to salvation, end of quote.
For witnesses, quote, proclaiming this good news, has only one meaning, field service, going from door to door with the organization's literature. There is little doubt that the majority of Jehovah's Witnesses have come to accept the teaching that this particular method of door-to-door witnessing is a God-ordained one, and that it was the method used by Christ and his apostles and disciples, and that it is the best and most effective way to accomplish a worldwide preaching of the good news in our time. The depth to which this view is ingrained in many is clearly illustrated in the December 15, 1965 issue of the Watchtower magazine, which tells of the activity of Jehovah's Witnesses in communist China.
One article recounts the experiences of Stanley Jones, a missionary in that country. He relates that after the communist conquest of Shanghai, where the Witnesses' activity was centered, they initially had freedom to carry on their work. About 12 months later, in 1951, they were told by the Chinese authorities that they could preach in their kingdom halls, conduct Bible studies in people's homes, but that house-to-house work was not allowed. The Watchtower missionaries, including Jones, who were not Chinese, ceased this activity. The Chinese Witnesses, however, continued on going from door to door, and Stanley Jones states that he and the other foreign missionaries were very pleased to see this.
Although the Chinese officials tolerated this for a time, they later began bringing to the police station the Chinese witnesses found going door to door, in spite of the decree. It reached the point where 3 witness women were detained for 4 days. Jones says that the missionaries were anxious to see how the Chinese witnesses would react to this, and that they were delighted on seeing that they were determined to go on and preach just the same. He states that the missionaries counseled them to take care to avoid any difficulties if possible, although they themselves refrained from doing it and apparently felt justified in such abstention. The missionaries were obviously in favor of the Chinese members continuing such door-to-door activity, in spite of the official declaration and the serious risks involved. What were the consequences? Stanley Jones relates, quote, "Then Sister Nancy Ewan was taken from the house-to-house work to the police station and detained. She had 4 children, one of them only 1 year old. I approached a lawyer for assistance, and he said, 'We cannot do a thing. If the matter is in the hands of the police, we cannot interfere.' Now that sister was detained for a period of 4 years before she was finally taken to court and sentenced. Just what her sentence was, I do not know. Another sister, a school teacher, likewise a mother of 4 children, was also arrested."
It's puzzling why the foreign missionaries didn't think it was their responsibility, but the Chinese women, mothers,
should
plainly
do
did.
this. So really, what are we saying here? That the door-to-door work is more important than the raising of your own children. That this would be expected of you. By who?
Yeah. So in the next segment, Nancy Ewan's story continues.